All right, welcome back to Steeler Thoughts and Chief Feelings, episode 35. I'm your co-host, Chris. I'm the Steelers fan and the philosophy professor here.
And I am Ajay. I am the Chiefs fan and psychiatrist here. Thanks so much to all of you that have been following along here on the YouTube channel, those of you who follow along wherever you download podcasts. And I guess I shouldn't say here, because if you're listening on the podcast app is here for you. But anyway, those of you who follow along on the wherever you download podcasts, and those of you who follow us on social media at STCF715 on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. I guess we may not have a TikTok for very long if TikTok gets banned. So then you only have to follow us on two different places, and I only have to post to two different places. So maybe that's a win-win for us, you know?
And I was like just learning how to use TikTok. This is like a little bit depressing for me. But I guess I'm not like emotionally invested in it, so I don't have that, if they get rid of it, I don't care.
Yeah, I can't say that I know how to use TikTok. Like, I actually take YouTube shorts and download them and then upload them to TikTok. That's like I make the shorts on YouTube and I upload them to Instagram and TikTok. So
Well,
I'm very much like a 60-year-old person using social media.
that is like me when I compiled the audio on this thing for last week when we had that little clip of a couple episodes ago when I was talking about 10 and 3 being the high point of our season, perhaps. I literally just took the video and dragged it into my my editor and it just like put it there. I was like, oh great, I don't have to do anything more than that. So I mean there's a little bit of playing with it, but yeah, that's my level of expertise here too. So
Well, I should get to our comment of the week, which again comes from the YouTube channel. I should start giving our social media people a little more love. I feel like I do most of my but I feel like the funny people comment on YouTube. So what can I do? You got to up your game, people on social media. So this was a comment on a video I posted about the 3rd and 12 Steelers play against the Ravens, where Pickens ran an out and up, and Russell Wilson wasn't able to hit him, and I blamed it on Wilson, which is all the context you need for this comment. And the comment of the week is from at Absurd Humorist on YouTube, who said, Wilson had to throw early due to pressure, and you have to throw behind the cornerback's hips, which were not turned out yet. May want to get some help before you pose as a football analyst. So that's your comment of the week.
that's a nice one. I mean maybe though yeah, I mean we did speculate whether there was more going on there about like why he threw it there, but it was definitely not in hindsight the right place to throw it, right? So I think you can criticize it, but I don't know.
And as far as the technical features of what Absurd Humorist had to say, it is true that Wilson was under pressure. That was brought up by a couple other commenters too, which is, I feel, fair. As far as the cornerbacks, I can't pretend that I have gone through the nuances of like ball placement as a quarterback. So there could be some level of detail that this person's talking about that I'm unaware of. But throwing, as far as the specific comment of throwing behind the cornerback's hips, I can't speak to that. I don't honestly really know what he means by that, or they mean by that, I should say. However, saying that the hips were not turned out yet is incorrect. I mean, the defender had already was made it very clear from the snap with his leverage that he was protecting the sideline. So I don't know that one has to know any more detail than to know that it was going to be very difficult for George Pickens to make it to the sideline, because that seemed to be the one thing the defender and the defender on the other side too. If you look, the corners were clearly trying to protect the sideline and preventing receivers from beating them to the outside at all costs. So in that context, I don't think it's too much of a leap to think that Wilson might have realized that maybe Pickens was not going to be able to get to the sideline.
Yeah. Yeah. I also just maybe want to voice a tad bit of skepticism that a quarterback is supposed to only throw it if they can diagnose the position of the cornerback's hips, and if it's positioned correct. I mean, they have a lot to think about very, very quickly, I'm sure, but I don't think I've ever heard an analyst check the cornerback's hips position. And maybe that is something that is sometimes done when you have the opportunity to see it, but I can't imagine that it's like a prerequisite for throwing that ball that you know where the hips are. But you know, teach me if I'm wrong. That's fine. Great.
So I guess that should segue us right into that game.
Yeah,
How
good. Yeah.
how do you feel?
I feel oddly calm. I mean, this is just sort of the status quo for us in the last couple of years. Um, and it felt, I mean, I think I said last week I wanted to do a kind of retrospective on the season, but I held off. It already felt like this was sort of written before it happened. And I think it played out, the kind of way that we worried about as Steelers fans, or expected at least. Um, Yeah, it's a familiar feeling being one and done. I guess like the season was a little bit different than some very recent seasons. It kind of felt similar to the 2020 season when we went 11 and 0 to start and then just completely fell off at the end and lost in the first round of the Browns. Um, this one, I mean, we didn't start as well, but 10 and 3 was fun while it lasted, and here we are now. So in this particular game, what's the insight that I have from it? I think the Ravens were just the better team. Like they were a lot more fun to watch. I have to like when I'm trying to be, there's like two ways to watch it, right? One is like as a Steelers fan and you're watching it and you're very unhappy when things are going badly. But there's like if you can sort of disentangle your feelings about, wanting the team to succeed with just like from what the game is like to watch from an objective point of view. I think the Ravens are clearly a much more fun team to watch. They're clearly a better team, at least in that game they were. Um, uh, and so, from a sort of objective perspective, it like yeah, the right team won, and the more exciting team won. Like the one that, as a casual fan, if I didn't really care about the names or the on the jerseys or the logos on the helmets, this would be a much more exciting team to watch. So that is the Ravens would be. So you know,
So I guess one way you could say that is at this level in the business and game, there's football justice.
yes, I mean that would be one way to say that. That is what Tomlin said in his press conference. So um, yeah, yeah. I mean, right. They they were clearly better from the start there. We did make it a little bit interesting in the second half. Um, And if you look at, I mean, we probably need to get into some discussion about what we do at quarterback next year. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that. But, Wilson's numbers look very good in this game. And
Yeah, they
I
do.
wonder if this is like what you were talking about. Like last year, his numbers were very, they were good, like overall in the season. But when it counted, we didn't do anything. I think he had like it was 30 or 60-ish yards at halftime. It was one of the two. I can't remember, but it was like almost nothing had happened. And, we basically didn't hold the ball at all. And that's been the story for a number of weeks now. Um, we did get on track a bit in the second half, but yeah, it was, when it counted, we weren't doing anything. And that's, I think got to give you pause. It is nice to look at the numbers and see what he was like 20 of 29 for 270 and two touchdowns or something like that. I mean, it was good, right? Like those are good stats. But for them to come the way they did is not good. So, yeah, I don't know. Uh,
I feel like Russell Wilson's performance was the perfect example of why you can't just read a box score and determine how a quarterback played. Because I think
yeah,
most people who watch that game would say that overall he played poorly. And yeah, he did have moments of brilliance, which, accounted for he had he had three deep passes on one touchdown drive. Like that basically like this was like if you took the Steelers offense from this year and you were like, let's make the most exaggerated version of their performance. Like this was the game. Like they did
yeah.
nothing or they had third and long and converted with a bomb. And that was about it for the entire game.
This was like the Russell Wilson strategy, right? Like it's gonna be like either very short dump off passes that are surprisingly inaccurate or whatever, or it's going to be these deep bombs that look beautiful and sometimes connect, right? And there's very little intermediate stuff, and somehow that ends up looking pretty good in the stat line at the end of things, even if, those connections that did happen were not when you needed them. So,
I am just realizing that I mischaracterized the 3rd and 12 play to Pickens as the Ravens game when it was from the Bengals game. I'm getting
oh,
my Steelers losses mixed up.
they're all blending together. Yeah, they all felt fairly similar. I guess they had their own characters, but they were similar themes. Um,
Well,
yeah.
and the thing too about like football being nuanced is that simultaneously I can say that the Steelers offense was bad and had really moments of brilliance, including from Russell Wilson. And they like there were a couple sliding doors moments where they really could have been in this game.
Mhm.
Like it's kind of crazy that all those things are true.
Yeah, that's right. It did feel like, if things had gone slightly differently. I mean, it's hard to know though, because like the defense, I mean, there was some, this was some of the commentary during the game picked up on this, but it looked like they were not totally in it. Like to see us get gashed for like the 44-yard touchdown run. I mean, what was that? Maybe the early fourth quarter. Um, yeah, like it looked like, we were not doing the things we were supposed to be doing. So,
I will say though, like after the Steelers scored the first time, that 44-yard run was kind of the only mistake that the defense made the rest of the way until like the game was out of hand. Like the
mm,
Ravens had a drive at the very end after the failed fourth down, but like the game was done at that point. Like, you scored a touchdown, they had the 44-yard touchdown run, then you scored a touchdown again, then a 3 and out where they only got 1 yard, but the offense couldn't do anything, and then forced another punt, and then the offense turned it over on downs, and that was the game. Like I do feel like there were a couple drives there, and I what was interesting to me, and I haven't done the film review yet for this game. This week has been a bit busy for me, but what has interested me is that it really seems like when the Ravens played too high coverage, the Steelers could not do anything. And the moment they would like rotate a safety down, then suddenly you just got to go route on the outside.
mm,
Like the I cannot believe that Arthur Smith is this level of sophistication. Like, I just don't think that he's not dialing up different route combinations from this. I just, I'm increasingly of the belief that Russell Wilson just doesn't want to throw on the intermediate level, and defenses know it, and they just don't care. They're like, okay, fine. Like, there was one of the dump offs to Pat Fryermuth that didn't get a first down. George Pickens ran like a corner route underneath the safety and was wide open, and Wilson didn't even give him a look. Like,
mm.
so I think that is part of the problem here, that Wilson really is kind of touchdown or check down right now.
Yeah. I don't know how much to. I mean, Wilson's protection has not been ideal for
That's
a
fair.
number of weeks now, and so it could be like that could be just a sort of problem with him about, you don't look around where you should be looking. But I think it could also be, he feels like he's got limited time to get the ball off, and he does, and so he's going to look to the places he's most comfortable looking, basically. And that might be what's just like to make an excuse for him. But he, I think there's plenty for him to complain about in terms of his protection in the last, half of the season, really. Sort of pretty constant pressure, and he doesn't help himself with that. Like every time he scrambles out of the pocket, you're like, no, like don't do this. And sometimes you like, the best that's gonna happen is a throwaway at that point. I feel like we haven't, our scramble drill has not been good. You would have thought, given how often he likes to do that, that we would have practiced. Maybe we did practice it, but it didn't. We didn't get good at it in game situations. So would have been nice to make some things happen on the scramble, but it was not in the cards. Yeah, and then another, we had heard going into the game that we were going to have some Justin Fields packages, and I think he made one appearance, maybe two, I think, because there was an early option play where he handed off to Jalen Warren, who got a good pick up for a first down, I think. And you could see that there were, I think, two linebackers basically waiting on Fields to pull it and run. So that threat was worked in that case. But then later on, I think he went in and ended up just throwing incomplete. I don't remember much about that play, but
I don't.
not a
I
lot.
mean, yeah, it was. I think he kind of had a handoff, run, throw option. I think, and I don't think the pass was that bad. It was just to. Was that the one to Darnell Washington? I'm trying to remember who that was to. I can't remember, but I remember at the moment, like it wasn't a perfect pass, but it was a catchable ball. It was just not catchable for the receiver. That's why I think it was Darnell Washington, but
Yeah.
I can't remember.
That sounds right. Which was, I think, the sec. I mean, like our first offensive play was a should have been an easy pass to Pat Frymouth, and he just like sort of spiked it as he was trying to catch it. Like that, I think set the tone nicely. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's where we are mentally. We're going to be making things hard on ourselves unnecessarily. We didn't do yeah, like to quote Tomlin again, we didn't do the routine things routinely on offense, and that makes it boom or bust basically, and that's what we saw.
And it was kind of the story of the season. It was, there were times when I think because of the threat of the run game where you were just getting a lot more single high coverage and Wilson was exploiting it and enjoying it. But the moment it was like, all right, we're going to put a second safety up there so you can't just run go routes, it became a little more difficult. And Wilson does seem to kind of, I mean, maybe that kind of tracks with what you're talking about as far as the clock in his head going really quickly. He wants to see something and go, and I think that was no more clear than on that failed fourth down play when he threw the bomb to Calvin Austin in double coverage rather than down to Pickens down the sideline. Like he saw the corner kind of cheat toward Pickens initially, and he's like, "All right, I'm going Austin," and it was like, "Why?"
Yeah, as soon as you see it in the air, you're like, that is not happening. uh, it was very clear that was not going to be completed as soon as it was thrown. But at that point, I just had to laugh. I was like, that is our fourth down play with the season on the line. I mean, it's it's not surprising, but it is disappointing.
And I was a little bit so. What was interesting to me defensively, I know Kirk Herbstreit like really called out the defensive effort on the broadcast. To me, I just felt like it felt a little inconsistent strategically. I actually kind of liked what it looked like they were doing early, where they were trying to force Lamar to hold it. The defensive end was just crashing, and then they were going to have a linebacker scrape over the outside to meet Lamar as he held the ball on the zone reads. And I like that a lot. It was basically like, we're not letting Henry get involved, and we're going to, you can get the ball, you can get past the defensive end. We're going to have somebody watching you, and you're going to take a hit. And I thought that worked pretty well for a couple drives. They were, the Ravens kind of methodically moved the ball their first drive, but they didn't have any big explosives. And I think when things started breaking down was when they moved away from that a little bit. I think Lamar getting his little chunks tested the patience and the discipline of the Steelers, and suddenly they started cheating over to Lamar. And when Henry has a little hole, like, then you're gone. Like I would just, as weird as it sounds, I would rather give Lamar a little bit of a head of steam than Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Because Lamar's response to someone in his face is to like juke, and that, believe me, that can be extremely dangerous. I'm not saying that I would love to have Lamar doing that, but when Derrick Henry gets ahead of steam, like there's a chance that nobody on the field can tackle him once he's moving at full speed.
Yeah. I think that's a good sort of summary of the bind they put us in from the early to late game stretch there, right? So early game, it was, we kept having that run pass or scramble option, and he kept pulling it because we were crashing hard, and like we were tackling Henry in the back. I mean, like it would have been nice if he had handed it off a couple of times, but yeah, he just kept sort of. It was a little bit more than nickeling and diming us. I think he was getting some good gains on that, like healthy gains, and I think they probably would have been happy to do that all game. But but you're right, we did get away from it a bit, and then we got gashed.
Yeah, then the floodgates open. And also, I think what happened was on a couple pass plays, and this is way easier said than done, but I feel like the rush lane integrity was lost, and Lamar was taking these huge dropbacks. He was dropping back like 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and then he was kind of allowing the defense to come back and separate, and he was just going right up the middle. And the tackles just weren't able to kind of keep the kind of whole pocket condensed, and then that was pretty devastating for a couple runs too. But when Lamar was keeping it and going it, like he was getting like 7-8 yards tops. It wasn't like he was running for 15-20 yards like Derrick Henry started to when he was getting going.
That's true. But
And he
seven.
was getting hit a lot of times. Like I love getting a hit on a quarterback, like if you're gonna run it 25 times with Lamar and I can hit him 20 times, like I'm a little more okay with that than the same thing with Henry.
Yeah, I think you do take that if those are the choices you're given. It would have been nice if we had figured out a way to, take a different option, right? As opposed to one of those that neither one is very good. Um, but and I guess that kind of just speaks to the talent level that the Ravens offense has right now. I mean, like, Lamar is just such a dual threat anyway. I mean, he can afford to take these humongous dropbacks because he's got an amazing arm and he can put it it doesn't matter. It's not going to be a big hindrance to him to like get the ball where it needs to go.
Hmm.
That happened on one of his touchdown passes. I thought he just sort of dropped back really far and then had a beautiful throw across the field into the end zone. But it did feel, I mean, and maybe this is to transition a bit into like big picture take homes from this. It felt like talent wise, the Ravens were much better off in this game. And I don't, maybe that's wrong because, you think about our defense and you think like, oh, TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, like we have big names, Cam Hayward, we have big names in our defense, but maybe they're big names to Steelers fans because they've been around for so long and they've had some good years, but it's not obvious. It didn't feel like we were like matched up talent wise. It felt like we had a deficit here. Uh, Certainly on the offensive side compared to their offense, our talent doesn't stack up. And even defensively, we're supposed, I think the highest paid defense in the league, and we, we're sort of outmanned against them. And I don't know, it's not a great feeling. It feels like, we have when you have no good options about like how to defend a team, you have either Henry running free or Lamar getting, I mean, not chunk plays, but moderate chunk plays routinely. It feels like you need to be doing, you need to have different players on the field. I think that might be one of the lessons here. I don't know.
Well, I would posit that. So to me, what like your defensive effort in this game reminded me a lot of the 2021 Chiefs offense, which is that I really do think in a world where, you know, I think that the initial defensive plan with real discipline could have worked. Now, what does work mean? Like, I don't mean that would have kept him out of the end zone, but I think it could have been like you give up 21, right? But then the thing is, well, you got to hope that your defense can get 20 or your offense can get 24. And that's where I think when you keep getting back onto the field and you're like, your goal is like, listen, we're taking the paper cuts. Stay disciplined. We're going to keep getting hurt, but it's going to be okay. I think that's a lot easier to sell when you feel like you're in the game. But as the game starts slipping away from you is when that discipline starts going too. And the comparison I make with the 2021 Chiefs offense, like everyone started dropping too high against us. They made us take it like the dink and dunk down the field, but our defense was trash to start that season. And so you're feeling tons of pressure because the other team just goes down in 6 plays and scores a touchdown. And then it's like, okay, but we got to be disciplined and we got to take our 12 plays and go all the way down the field and score a touchdown. And then a ball's bouncing off somebody's hands and getting picked off, or, people are making mistakes because the pressure is so high when you're trying to just do the right thing every time slowly, when you feel like the other side of the ball isn't helping you out and making you feel like you're in a position of strength.
Yeah, I can understand that. The defense at that point, at least in this game, the defense feels like they need to make a play because the offense is not going to make the requisite plays, and uh, so they can't just keep accepting the slow death by a thousand cuts that they're being taught. They say, we need to do something, break up the monotony here. Yeah, maybe that's right. That's a charitable read for the defense. It still feels like, I mean, maybe this is just unrealistic, but to have really, again, no good options about how to defend them makes me think either we need a different defensive scheme that sort of puts our players in better positions, or we just need different kinds of players, at least at some positions, to be able to defend that offense. But I don't know. I mean, you can't. I mean, you can, but it's risky to design a defense to stop like one kind of offense because you're not going to see just one kind of offense, um, which is maybe like why. Well, anyway, yeah,
Well, plus you're really not going to see that kind of offense very often
yeah,
because
that's what I
there
mean.
is that quarterback is one of one.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of Derrick Henrys either. So yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
um, yeah. So anyway, that's the. We certainly need more offensive firepower, or at the very least, the line has to play better. I don't even know like what this is another season where it ends. It's like I have no idea what it will look like next year. I mean, I have some sense that the defense will probably still have T.J. Watt. I probably still have Minka Fitzpatrick and Cam Hayward just signed an extension. Like so, the big names will probably still be there. Although I don't know, you got to think that we have to be willing to do something to shake things up because this is getting old, and I think everyone thinks it, not just the fans, right? So, well, it'll be interesting to see what happens this offseason for us. Um, More interesting than usual.
So I guess the elephant in the room question is, what do you do at quarterback?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't like. I guess it depends on how you diagnose what was going wrong with the offense in the last chunk of the season here, but I think. If you think that it is like, the reason Wilson was struggling a lot was because the offensive line was not giving him time, and therefore he had to just like look at his comfort areas or the quick areas to check, then maybe you run it back with Wilson. If you can sign him to, I mean, the way this season ended, he's not going to have a lot of leverage to get an amazing deal with us, right? Uh, and you know, it's not like he'll be as cheap as he was this year for us, but I don't know. I don't know. We don't have great options. I could see bringing Wilson back. I could see bringing Fields back, and uh, and trying to do something like trying to find another quarterback as a backup. But yeah, I don't know. It's not. Nothing sounds that good. I'll be honest. We need to find a franchise quarterback, and that's of course very easy to say, not very easy to do. But that's. It feels like we're gonna have more seasons like this until we find, you know, a top tier quarterback. Um, that's that's how it's been for a
What?
while.
So one of the things that was like kind of rumored as a potential suggestion, I don't know what kind of legs this actually has, was trading for Kyler Murray. What would you think about that?
Um,
What would you
I
give
don't
up
know.
for Kyler Murray to have him as your quarterback next year?
I don't know. I haven't paid enough attention to him this year, or in recent seasons to know. Um, I mean, I guess what is this an accurate characterization? He's like a younger and more mobile Russell Wilson. Like that.
Yeah, I don't know that he ever had the poise that Wilson had at his peak, but I do think he's like way more dynamic with his legs and I mean, probably they're about the same as far as like deep passing prowess. I mean, I would give the edge to Wilson, but through his career in Seattle, he threw some pretty important deep balls. But Kyler has come up with some big plays here and there as well.
Mhm.
But let's see. This year he was 3,851 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 11 picks.
That's fine.
Um,
But I think with like a good offensive coordinator, I don't, with a really good offensive coordinator, which I don't even know if Arthur Smith's gonna be back. He's had some head coaching interviews, but also don't know that, you know, he was the long-term answer there anyway. We'll see. But, I would certainly be willing to give Arthur Smith more time. Um, 'Cause, we were more exciting this year than we were the last several seasons, many seasons.
I do. I mean, I'd be surprised if Arthur Smith got a head coaching job based on this offense this year.
Yeah, yeah,
I
you would be surprised. I don't even know why he's getting the interviews, to be honest. But
like I could see him getting a head coaching job one day again. I just don't know that it would be now.
yeah, yeah, they it must have been like we got to make our list, and they started early in the season about like who you gonna interview, and then like early in the season we looked like yeah, that's a competent offense that made a big turnaround from last year, and then he stayed on the list even though the offense just fell off a cliff. That's maybe that's what happened there. Um,
Who interviewed him actually? Oh, the Bears.
yeah, and I think he's
Uh,
got another interview tomorrow with I don't even know. I don't remember. Yeah.
I searched Arthur Smith interview, and as something on Twitter came up with someone in all caps writing, "Why is Arthur Smith getting head coaching interviews?"
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I don't know. Uh, I mean, like I'm not really attached. I guess I like the guy, but I'm not really attached to him as our offense coordinator. Like, I would be interested in seeing what he can do in another season. I'd also be interested in seeing what a totally different offensive mind can do, because this wasn't good enough. Definitely. I don't know. What do you? We're coming up on a break, but like, what does a third party like you think about our quarterback? Like, what should we do?
Oh, I'm gonna use the break to think about this one.
Okay.
I'll give you an answer on the other side
Okay,
of the
great.
break.
That sounds good.
All right.
And we're back. Um, so Jay was about to tell all of us what the Steelers should do at quarterback. Uh, Go ahead.
Yeah.
We need it.
Well,
We need you guys.
unfortunately, I don't have any kind of magic bullet here. I think really the one thing I will say is you have to be in a position where you have somebody that you feel like could turn into a quarterback that could win a Super Bowl. I personally don't think Russell Wilson is that person. So then to me, the question is, do you think Justin Fields could be that person? Because the only reason, in my opinion, to stay with Russell Wilson is if you think you could get that person, but that person's not ready to play right now. Um, so honestly, like all things considered, like I'm not sure that I think that Russell Wilson, now that we've seen a full year of him, I think my opinion has, went through a roller coaster, but ended up settling about where I was where the season started. So I would personally move on from him. And then the question of like, if you think Fields can develop from here, which is an open question, I think he's had a lot of time now. We're starting to get in that territory of like, he's kind of shown you who he is. So unless he shows you anything different soon, I don't know that I would believe that either. And so then the question is, where is that other quarterback coming from? Are you willing to take a couple swings at like lower level draft picks to see if you can find a diamond in the rough? Like we know the track record of that is really poor. So, you would, there's always, that I think Kirk Cousins was like a third round pick. There's always the chance of finding somebody down there that is a potential. Brock Purdy was a seventh round pick. As someone who could at least be something for you, do you want to trade that route, or do you want to trade for someone like Kyler Murray?
Mhm. But
I'd
would
actually,
you go ahead.
I'd be okay with a Murray trade as long as it wasn't prohibitive. Like You know that you're probably going to have to give up a first round pick. And the question is like first round pick and what else?
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I don't know that I would be opposed to like burning like just a first round pick to try to get Kyler Murray. Now, if it's like, I think once you get to multiple first round picks, I'd be out. If it was a first and second, I'd be like, I don't think so. But if you had to give up like a first and a third, or like a first and then next year's third for a shot at Kyler Murray, I mean, because you'll still be paying him a lot of money, I feel like that's where I would start entertaining that conversation.
Yeah, I could see it. I think once you start talking about giving up first round picks, though, I think you might also just like think about giving up first round picks to draft a quarterback high. Like here's our breakdown of first round picks for 2020 through 2022. In 2020, we picked no one and then Chase Claypool. 2021, Najee Harris, Pat Fryermuth. 2022, Kenny Pickett, George Pickens. Pickens has got some stuff going on. He might not be with us anymore. Harris is probably not going to be like basically the only person that's surely going to be here next year is Fryermuth. If you had just given up like one, two, three, four first round picks, you could have gotten a very high first round pick and taken a very highly rated quarterback coming out of college. Now I'm not saying like that's there's still big risk there and that's like a huge gamble to take. But like, you know, I don't know that that's a terrible option, right? If you could go back and replay things, like would maybe it would have been better to, draft a trade four first round picks over the next 3 years or whatever, and draft a quarterback really high because you're not in the position to just, your draft pick is not high enough. But I don't know. That seems like that could be like, shouldn't that be on the table? I don't know. You're right. We need it's hard to move forward without settling on a franchise quarterback. But, and I agree, like, it doesn't seem like Wilson is that quarterback now. And there were flashes earlier this year where Fields looked like very good. Remember, like against the Chargers, he had those like very decisive, and it wasn't just like the boom or bust plays that Wilson like that we've been accustomed to since Wilson took over, right? Fields was hitting all areas of the field, and he was very accurate for the most part. So I guess I'm talking myself into thinking like either you run it back with Fields at a fairly manageable deal, or you do something drastic with trading some first round picks or something like that. Maybe for Kyler Murray, or maybe you try to draft I don't even know like what the college quarterback situation is, who's going to be in the draft next year or whatever. But it seems
It's
like
not it's not like a crazy good college draft. I don't know that there's like a sure thing.
yeah,
I would put it this way, like last year, I think Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May. Now, obviously we have the benefit of hindsight, but I would think if I remember a perception correctly, that all three of those guys would be ahead of any quarterback in this year's draft.
yeah.
Um, this year, there are basically two quarterbacks. One is Cam Ward from Miami, who often gets
He's old.
comped.
He's old though, right? Like he's been at Miami for a while.
Honestly, I don't know. Maybe.
I think because they played UF in like the first game of this, one of their first games of the season, and I remember hearing like he's had several
I
like
think he came from
season-ending
like
injuries.
Washington State or something.
Oh,
Didn't
really?
Cam Ward? Let's see how many. He is 22 already.
Okay,
So,
it's not as old as I
yeah.
thought.
And let's see, he's born in May. So he's going to be 23 by the time the season starts. So he played at the University of Incarnate Ward for 2 years, then Washington State for 2 years, and then the 1 year at Miami.
Okay, I don't know.
Um, he gets comped to Russell Wilson a lot, interestingly enough. And so he, to me, is probably like the best, uh, like prospect, but he's going to be so coveted because he's kind of the prospect. And then the other one is Deion Sanders' son, Shadur
Yeah,
Sanders. And I, to be honest, I didn't watch a lot of Colorado. I am not a huge fan of the way that, like, I don't know. There's just a lot of talk that came from that team and a lot of, and to me, I just get a ton of, I don't know, Shadur Sanders might be like a great guy, but when there's that much surrounding everything, there's so much talk. Deion Sanders seems like he's going to be heavily involved. It honestly, the thing it reminds me of, and this isn't a one-to-one comparison, but like it just reminds me a lot of Johnny Manziel. It's like this really talented guy. There's just a lot of talking all the time. Like, it just makes me worried. I was never in on Johnny Manziel ever. I had never assumed it would like fall off a cliff like it did with him. Like I just assumed he'd be like fine, but I feel like there's certain quarterbacks that I've just, for different reasons, it's like Tebow to me. Like when there's just a lot surrounding somebody like Tebow, Manziel, Sanders feels like that to me,
Yeah.
and that scares me. I was scared of both of those guys, and I'm scared of Sanders for the same reason. Like I wouldn't want anything to do with him just for the exact same reasons I wouldn't have wanted anything to do with Tebow or Johnny Manziel.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my naive take is similar to that, just because of all the noise around a quarterback prospect like that. I would try to avoid them. But yeah, I think this discussion has made me recall how promising, but also limited, but still promising Fields looked earlier in the year. Uh, and I pine for that now that I'm so used to this Russell Wilson boomer bust and mostly bust performance, right? Like Fields actually hit different areas of the field and was accurate and decisive and stayed in the pocket when we needed it
It
and
was
was
a
also a
huge
threat.
red zone weapon. Like
Yeah.
he's real good in the red zone.
You got to design an offense around him, and I don't think we did that because we expected Wilson to be the quarterback from the get-go. I think if you give us an off season to design an offense around Fields, like there's promise there, and I feel like that might be the way to go at this point. But I mean, it's not
I actually
wonderful, but
I
yeah,
think that's a great point. The only problem with that is then you want your backup to be kind of Fields like, you know.
yeah, that's true.
Um, so then, if because my thought was like, well, could you go with Fields and then just take a couple swings at maybe there's like a third or fourth round quarterback that you're find promising, and you take a couple swings at quarterback and see if there's somebody that you think you could develop. I mean, realistically, when you're drafting below the first round for a quarterback, you're probably developing a backup, like probably. But, if there's at least you're doing something to keep the churn going, rather than just staying stagnant and then hoping that you can do something with Fields. I think I like that idea. Just like, Kyle Shanahan did for RG3, or like Greg Roman initially, and now Todd Monken have done with Lamar Jackson. Like when you have a quarterback with this kind of dual skill set, or Joe Brady's doing with Josh Allen, he has a unique skill set for the quarterback position. And if you utilize the fact that I feel like Justin Fields is like almost as fast as Lamar Jackson. I don't think he's as agile as Jackson is, but Justin Fields really fast.
Yeah.
So I think there is something there that could be utilized. And maybe that's the answer, that you go with Fields, and then the only thing with me is I think you want some other level of churn,
Yeah.
because I'm not convinced on Fields either. But if you were like, we're going with Fields or Wilson, I would pick Fields. I mean, I would have done that before this year too. I never thought Wilson would at least have the little bit of success he did, but I do feel like, especially with that point, I think that's an excellent point, that like if you design an offense around Fields, like suddenly this is a different conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where I've talked myself into in this conversation. That would be my choice, but it's not my choice anyway, so we'll see what happens. Probably we'll resign Wilson for like a 5-year deal, something like that.
Oh God.
Doesn't make any sense. But,
Okay, so as we switch gears to talking about the divisional round playoff games, I came across something that I thought I would bring up to you on the podcast as a trivia question,
okay.
because I thought it was so interesting. So I came across this company called Umbo, which markets mushrooms that are supposed to help you in performance. There's like psychedelic and like, I don't know what kind of mushrooms. They're the mushroom experts. I'm not. But if I were to tell you that a former NFL player that has played the Steelers in the playoffs is a co-founder of this company. Would you be able to guess who it is? Functional mushrooms to help you with performance.
Can you tell me offense or defense? Like what they were,
It's an
what they,
offensive player who played against the Steelers in the playoffs. And I'll give you an added hint. He played on a team in a state that you wouldn't be surprised would be involved in functional mushrooms.
well, I wouldn't be surprised if someone on the Broncos from Colorado were involved in functional mushrooms. And we have played them in the playoffs, but who would it be? It wouldn't be Tebow. Is it Plummer?
It's Jake Plummer. That's right.
That's believable.
Isn't that track? Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, wow. That tracks very well. Yes.
I saw that and I was like, wow, that's great.
There were times when it looked like he might have been on mushrooms on the sideline. Um, so they're psychedelic but performance enhancing or something?
So probably calling them psychedelic is unfair. They are marketed as performance enhancing mushrooms. Basically, the idea being that like people take medications and supplements to try to help them. Mushrooms can do all of that for you. And here they have various strains of mushrooms, and maybe some of them are literally like the kinds of mushrooms you get at the store. I shouldn't like jump to conclusions. I just know he's selling mushrooms.
That's very believable. Well, maybe they work. Maybe we should have tried them. Originally thinking before you said they were former, I was thinking it's probably Aaron Rodgers, but yeah, with the
I don't know that I could have made that a trivia question. That would have been like too much nail on the head.
um, well, yeah, okay. So, well, can anyone buy these? Like maybe I should buy some of these and see what happens.
I don't know what the restrictions are on them. I'll check on the website and get back to you on the next podcast.
Maybe I'll do some for one of our podcast episodes if I can buy them.
Maybe that'll be your punishment. You have to go through like an entire, like at one dose of mushrooms for everything you got wrong.
Oh yeah, that's right. That'll be interesting. Mushrooms for anyone who actively uses their minds and bodies. Well, that's everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. Non-psychedelic, they say, but extremely functional, whatever that means. Okay. Yeah, that's curious. I'm looking at that. Well, does this segue into the divisional round stuff? I mean, I could.
Well, you did play. Did you play Plummer in the divisional round? No, I think you played him in the AFC Championship game, right?
Yeah, we play in the AFC Championship.
Yeah.
I
So that
could.
doesn't segue.
Well, it's good enough. Yeah, so we do have divisional round games coming up. Uh, Chiefs host the Texans, which I imagine if you're gonna like take your pick of teams from the first round, it would either be the Texans or Steelers, right? I mean, I think you should be pretty happy with who you're facing at this point. Um, are you?
Yeah, I I don't. I'm not thrilled about playing anybody in the playoffs, as I said last week. Like, everybody's good, but I feel like that's fair. That if I were to pick, I mean, they're the last two teams that we beat, and we didn't look like we struggled too much in either game. So I
Yeah.
think that's fair. I mean, Sean Payton definitely thinks it's not the Broncos. I don't know if you saw this quote from Sean Payton's exit interview press conference, but he basically said, like, we really felt like had we gotten through this game, we really had a good feeling about the next one. uh,
Well,
which
I
I feel
guess
like is,
I don't know what to make about that aside from he's inflating the performance against the backups in the last week of the season. I don't know.
well, I feel like it's very much akin to the like, we really, really loved Patrick Mahomes. Like these statements that are like not verifiable. And you just move on. Like, what are you
Yeah.
gonna do? Um,
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know how you can say that after getting. I mean, they looked good in the first half against the Bills, and then they did
I was
not.
actually like, I was feeling so good because on our podcast last week, I said I thought it would be 10-7, at the end of the first quarter or midway through the second quarter, and I had said it was going to end 34-10, and it ended
Yeah, that
31-7.
was
I was
really
like, oh
impressive.
man, this
Really
was
good
so
going down the
close though.
Yeah, it ended up, I mean, it was 10-7 for even a little bit into the third, right? If
Yeah,
I remember.
didn't they go to halftime at 10-7? I'm
I
forgetting
think
now,
that's
but I
right.
think that's right. It was 10-7 longer than I thought it was going to be.
But
It
it
might have
did,
been 13-7 at halftime. I
oh,
can't remember.
that's possible, yeah. But it was more of a game than you might have thought. Anyway, so yeah, you don't, I mean, we should talk Bills Ravens too, because that'll be a fun one. But what are your thoughts on Chiefs Texans at this point, aside from like being happy with the matchup?
I think the Texans, their defense is really good. I mean, we just saw them. I think that our offense is back at full strength. I mean, honestly, more than anything, I feel bad for the Texans and the Texans fans that they lost Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell. I think that's just like it's a rough spot for the offense, and I think you really saw that against the Chargers. I mean, man, they had nothing going on in the first quarter. Like it was really rough, and then they started piecing some stuff together. But I would really give the defense more credit for kind of jump starting them. I mean, they turned. I think Herbert threw 4 picks,
Yeah, for
and he had thrown 3 picks all year in the regular season. Like
wow,
he threw
that's
four
surprising.
picks.
Wow.
Yeah, that I mean, it was the defense was just all over this one, and I don't know that the offense ever looked amazing. They started running the ball pretty well toward the end, but they had kind of broken the Chargers' spirit at that point. So I think from that aspect, it's a little regrettable for people who, you know, from a more neutral perspective, would want to watch a good game. I think them not having Diggs or Tank Dell is kind of hard. And you even saw it in the game we played against them. Like their offense looked a lot different once Tank Dell got hurt.
Mhm.
So I do think it's going to be kind of rough sledding for them offensively. And I think that the Chiefs offense is rounding into form. This feels to me like it'll be something like a 30-17 kind of game. And I expect, it's playoff Patrick time. Like, it's
Playoff
like
matchup, yeah.
it's time to really, I expect this team to come out and score on its first 2 drives. Like, I think it's going to be one of those, like, they've come out of the gate looking great. Uh,
Yeah.
and then they'll do the Chiefs thing where they kind of kick field goals through the second and third quarter. And it'll be like something annoying, like 23-10, and you're just like, why have we not put this game away yet? And then the Texans will score a touchdown, and everyone will be like, oh, the Texans are back in it, and then we'll have to go down and score and put the game away. It'll be something like that. But I think it's not going to be a blowout, but I don't know that the Chiefs are ever going to look like in terrible danger throughout the game.
Yeah. Um, I forget, did they put up 30 in any game this season?
They've put up 30 twice. Only once in regulation, though. That was against the Panthers when we won 30-27. The other time was against the Bucks in overtime. We won 30-24. We have not scored 31 though.
I feel
But
like this is going to be their highest point total of the season, and it'll be like, ah, okay, that's what we were waiting for. That'll be like the playoff Patrick, as you said, is back.
Right, Patrick.
Do we want to? Yeah, we should do score predictions here. So are you settling on what, 30 or 31?
30-17, I think. The most Chiefs thing ever would be after not hitting 31 at all, they're going to hit 31 in every playoff game this year. Like that would be the most Chiefs thing ever.
I could see it. Uh, I kind of want to. Yeah, I kind of want to go. I mean, that seems eminently plausible. I kind of want to go harder and say it'll be like 34 to 13 or something like that. I don't feel like it's going to be close. I think this is like the Chiefs are clearly the better team, and they've had a lot of rest, a lot of time to prepare. Um, I think this should be straightforward. But you never know. I mean, that's why you play the games. But
And I do think there is a chance that the Texans defense kind of their line wrecks stuff a little bit early, and then the Chiefs kind of have to solve some problems through the game and start looking better. But I'm just used, when Patrick Mahomes, especially in the first playoff game of the year, the only exception I can think of is that 2019 year when we went down to the Texans 24 nothing, and when we went down to the Titans 10 nothing. Usually when he starts playoff games, he starts off like hot. The offense is moving, looking good. Like I really expect them to score 10 to 14 points on their first two drives. And then I think things might settle down a little bit. But even, that the Jaguars game when Mahomes got the high ankle sprain in 2022, like he was dealing before he turned his ankle. Like it was one of those where it felt like he was going to throw for 350 and four touchdowns. So I wouldn't be surprised if he looks great in the first quarter and the Chiefs kind of put everybody on notice and then kind of coast a little bit because they're annoying and never just blow anybody out.
That's how the Chiefs do it. Well, do they do? I don't know. Do they do that in the playoffs too? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, last year there weren't any real, but last year the offense was really a step below what we're used to. In 2022, Mahomes was playing with a high ankle, so it's kind of hard to know what was going on. But in 21, we blew out the Steelers.
Oh yeah,
At least
that was a fun one. Spurs last game. Yeah.
But remember, that one was kind of a nervy game to start. I think the Steelers scored first.
Yeah, on a
TJ
TJ
Watt
Watt.
recovered a fumble and scored a touchdown. And then I think we scored 28 straight right after
Yeah,
that.
I think it was like a quarter where you just near the beginning of the second quarter, I think we scored, and then it was just like, okay, we're playing now, and the Chiefs just went off. But
Yeah, it was like 28-7 at halftime or something. Like it was.
yeah, good stuff. That's par for the course for us in playoff games these years. But anyway, yeah. So the Chiefs should win, we think. No surprises there. Do you want to? Is there more detail you want to go into in this game or analysis, or do you want to look around at the other ones coming up?
Well, the only other thing was my prediction, I think, is that the Chiefs start DJ Humphries at left tackle and Joe Tooney at left guard. I think they will do that, and then if it's going poorly for whatever reason, then they'll shift back to Tooney at left tackle and Mike Caliendo at left guard.
Okay.
But I think the upside of the Tooney DJ Humphries pairing is higher. And I think that they liked how Humphries looked against the Broncos. He played that whole game,
Oh yeah.
except the very last series against the Denver backups. And I think they just wanted to get him into game shape. And I think they liked how he was moving. So that would be my guess as to what they try. And especially because the Texans really wrecked the Chargers interior last week. I think it'll be nice to have Tooney inside because I think Caliendo has been weaker as a guard than DJ Humphries was as a tackle this year, is my read.
That's a nice comparison. Weaker as a guard than he was as a tackle. Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens if they have to make in-game adjustments there at left tackle. But I guess that has been the spot to focus on if there were going to be a problem. Any other if okay, so maybe this would be a good question. What are your top three areas of concern? I imagine left tackle is one of them.
Yeah, I think left tackle, really just the offensive line in general. Are they going to, if the offensive line holds up, this will be one of those where I don't know what the over under is on Mahomes passing yards in the first half, but take the over. If the offensive line holds up, we might see a 200-yard half from Mahomes in the first half. I really think he's going to come out and look fantastic. That would be number one. Number two, and that'll be kind of throughout this. If we stop the run, I think that is it. I feel pretty confident. So maybe this isn't an area of concern because this is what we did. There are a couple teams that we're going to play. In fact, every playoff game this year, I think is going to be, can we stop the run? Whether it's the Texans, if we are fortunate enough to beat the Texans, then the Ravens or the Bills, it's going to be, and if we're fortunate enough to beat them, then Eagles, Lions, it's going to be about, can you stop the run? So I think that is, and that's our playoff MO. we played the Dolphins, and that's what we did. We just kind of really shut down the run game, and they couldn't do anything. So I'm trying to think of another area of concern. I mean, I sound very confident. The
Not too good.
offensive line is like the big one to me. Like
Yeah.
I am, if the offensive line looks good, I feel pretty good. Normally, I would say our second corner situation, but Jalen Watson looks like he's going to be coming back, which is amazing. I don't think he's going to play the whole game this time, but unfortunately for the Texans, like they're out their number two and three wide receivers, so they are not uniquely situated to put pressure on our, down the line defensive backs. And I think one thing that's very nice for us is that we're going to be playing a lot of teams, maybe not the Texans, but teams through the playoffs that are going to try to put us in our base defense. The Ravens, the Bills, the Lions, the Eagles are all teams that are potentials to do that. And that's kind of better for us, which historically has been worse for us. But, we don't really love our defensive backs as we kind of get down the roster. So I don't mind not being a nickel and dime. It's kind of
Yeah.
nice if Leo Chanel, I think, is going to be so crucial in this playoff run. I think the linebackers in general are going to be really crucial, but I don't know, man. I'm excited. I feel like this might come together.
It's just
As kind of an up and down year, but this might that kind
an
of
up and down year in which you went 15-2, and
yeah,
the last loss was a meaningless one. So.
yeah, it's true. But
But
you
yes,
know,
I know what you mean.
it just feels like what the teams that are going to play us are good at tends to match with what this team is good at this year, which isn't always the case for the Chiefs going into the playoffs. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you have reason to be. I think that, this things have lined up nicely, and you're very healthy right now. You got a long time to rest, and you had bad injury luck earlier in the year, and you weathered it, and here you are. And by the way, you did say like the defensive player to watch was going to be Leo Chanel, like back in when was that? In like the summer at some point.
Like
So
August, maybe.
yeah, so people, you heard it here before, but we'll see what happens in the playoffs. But it looks like this is lining up to be.
Just don't be shocked when you see a Leo Chanel making big tackles against the run. I feel like when they get us in our base, or we're going to move him down and he's going to be like an overhang, like an extra edge almost. uh, he will be heard from. And if we beat, if we get past this one, if we beat the Bills or the Ravens, it's going to be because Leo Chanel had a big game. That's going to be a big part of it.
Well, that's exciting. I have to admit, like the Texans Chiefs is not the most exciting matchup for me, but thinking about Chiefs Ravens or Chiefs Bills is like those would be fun games to watch, because both of those, like earlier this year, were both very entertaining games, and ones that there would be a lot of storylines in. But one game at a time here. So get past the Texans, and then we'll talk.
I know. Let's please beat them, and then, otherwise, this will not be a fun conversation to look back on.
Yeah.
But and like I said, I do think the Texans are a like this is not a guaranteed win. I just feel like the Texans are in a bit of a rough spot as far as their receiver depth. It just makes their offensive firepower. They're not. They're still a young coming together offense, and when you lose like two incredibly good pass catchers, that makes your life a lot harder.
Yep. Yeah. Um,
So
all
do
right.
we want to
Well,
do Commanders Lions next?
yeah, sure. Is that the next game on the schedule?
Yeah, that's the next one. That is the Saturday night. God, this is going to be such a fun weekend. I love. Well, it's gonna. It's always weird when the Chiefs play first, because then you're like, either I'm going to hate the rest of
Yeah.
the weekend,
Either I'm not
or
going to watch
it's
any
going to be
football
great.
after that,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
I'll watch it all. Right.
Like we're going to lose to the Texans at home, and then I'm just going to be like, screw this. Or we're going to win, and this is going to be an amazing week of watching football.
Yeah. That's the risk. I mean, it's true even like within the day on Sunday, right? Like when your team plays early, and then it's like it kind of determines how much you care about the rest of the games that day. It's like if you win, oh, now I'm interested in what happens, and if you lose, it's like, yeah, whatever.
I actually so I'm trying to remember so I think what happened 2 years ago was the Chiefs played the Jaguars in the early game, and then I think that was the Eagles Giants was the second game. And I was in Virginia, and so I made plans with Lonnie to watch the second game of the Buffalo Wild Wings. And I told him, like, listen, if the Chiefs lose the first game, I'll still honor my commitment and come, but you may not enjoy being around. And then Patrick Mahomes sprains his ankle on the first, like, and I was like, oh my God. But they managed to pull it out. And so the Eagles Giants game ended up being a terrible game. I think the Eagles just like blew them out. But yeah, it is a bit risky, like making plans after a Chiefs game because you never know what's going to happen, especially a playoff game.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. Um, but yeah, Commanders Lions. What do you make of that? I mean, are the Commanders up to this? I don't think so, but I could probably be talked into it.
I think they're up to three quarters of this. I think this will
Okay.
be a game. Uh,
Yeah.
what's funny is like, so I my thoughts last week were that Commanders Bucks was going to be the one exciting game, which I feel that was correct.
Yeah.
But
What?
I thought they were going to score way more points than they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when it was like 10-10 at half, I was like, whoops. You know?
We both said so.
But
I said like 40 to 30 or something like
yeah,
that.
that's I think I said 41-30. I do feel like the Bucks had that game though. That Baker Mayfield fumble was really they were up I think 4 and then Baker fumbled. That was a
He
real
did not
tough
have the
third
party that
down.
we both kind of expected him to have.
Yeah, I really thought he was gonna, but I kind of feel the exact same way about this game like I felt last week. I think that this is going to be the high scoring game.
Do
Maybe
you think the
41
Lions
to
won't
30
shut
is
them down?
ambitious. No, I think Jaden Daniels is going to really carve up their secondary.
Huh.
Uh,
Interesting.
but I think it's going to be one that again it'll be like it'll get to two possessions at the end just because they're not going to quite have enough juice. But maybe I'll like calm down a little bit from the 41-30 last time. Maybe I'll say something more like 34-24. Like I feel like it'll be something like that. I think Jaden Daniels will keep them in it through almost three quarters, and then it'll be the Lions will kind of have too much.
Yeah. That sounds like a very plausible score to me. I guess I maybe I'm a little bit more skeptical that Jaden Daniels will have that much success. Um, but maybe
I have so much faith in Terry McLaurin. I feel like he's so good. He got second team All Pro, which was one of my unlikely but plausible
yeah.
that he would get an All Pro. Um, and Diami Brown has been playing really well the last 2 weeks. I'm always a little skeptical of wide receivers that didn't do anything for like the first 2 or 3 years of their career and then break out and like I don't know that this means that his career is on an upward trajectory, but he's had a couple good games recently. So
Yeah.
if he's a good number two, like that's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I guess wide receivers you feel like you typically know by like year two, right? If they're
Yeah,
gonna be something. I don't know if there's a lot
especially Andy Reid wide receivers. I feel like if they're not good in year one. We gotta give up on them.
of uh, yeah, I guess there's a whole Steelers wide receivers have a lot going on mentally in the recent. Do you know Deontay Johnson's back on the Ravens again?
What like what is happening?
I think I think probably they just don't want him to let other teams know anything about the Ravens, basically. I can't imagine that's like how could they want him back to play for them? I don't know, but who knows? Uh, but anyway, back to the Lions Commanders. I think I might lean more into the Lions here. Something like well, you said 34. What did you say?
24, 34,
34.
24.
Man, that's so plausible. Okay, I might say 35-20. Um, I think, yeah, that seems plausible to me as well. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it were closer, but I do feel like the Lions are, you know, they're gonna be up, they're gonna be energized for this, and I think they might come out to a really big early lead, and then Washington has to come back a bit. But
All right. Do you want to
any
take a
break here
break real quick and then we'll cover the last two games?
sounds good.
And we're back. Um, so honestly, this next game to me is the one that I am I feel like I know what I think about the other three games, but Rams Eagles is the one where I'm like, I don't. I go back and forth. I don't know. What is your
Yep.
conception about what's going to happen in this game?
I feel similarly unsure about Ravens, Bills, and Rams, Eagles, but not in the same way, I guess. But my level of uncertainty about them is similar. Because the Rams looked really good in beating the Vikings, and the Eagles, they're just like a very, very, solid team, I feel like. So it's hard to, I think you got like the Rams team that, like, are they like catching fire at the right time? Maybe that's what's happening, or maybe this was kind of fluky. I mean, I think I expect the Eagles to win, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams somehow like go on a tear here and they beat the Eagles and then give probably the Lions or whoever it is a run for their money in the championship game. But yeah, I mean, I'm biased because the Eagles beat us very handily, and I think that's like that influences how good I think they are. We didn't play the Rams, but I just think the Eagles are like they don't have a lot of weaknesses. They don't have. I don't think they're not like an all-time great team, but they're a very good team, and I think they should. I think they should handle this unless the Rams do something surprising. Yeah, I don't. That's my vague thoughts about it. My vague, very high level thoughts about it at this point. Um, are you which way are you leaning?
I so I have three different things that I'm considering. Like one being that I don't want to overreact to the wild card round. I feel like I liked how the Rams looked so much, and I did not love how the Eagles looked in the wild card round. Point number two, I feel like if I just take the actual teams out of it, like this story sounds like a story that the Eagles win, right? Like how many times do you see like the team looking really hot in the wild card round, then coming on the road in the divisional round and getting put in their place a little bit by a better team? Like, the Eagles were what, 14-3 and the
Yep.
Rams were 10-7. Like this just sounds like that story, where a team played at home in the wild card round, looked really good, then went on the road in the divisional round, and it's like, oh yeah, but they're not quite in the class of the teams that are going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That to me is like this. I feel like we've seen this many, many times, and that could be. But the ultimate thing that is making me hesitate is I just think that Sean McVay is so much of a better coach than Nick Sirianni.
Yeah.
And I am terrified of being like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna place my fate in the hands of Nick Sirianni over Sean McVay. It's really. I think ultimately I'm gonna lean Eagles, but I don't love it. I
I mean, right. It's because the roster's better, right? It's not like
Yeah,
you expect cool strategies or surprising plays or anything like that out of them. I mean, maybe the tush push is their cool strategy or whatever, but like they're not they're not gonna be yeah, yeah. It's because they have better players basically, and they're built better essentially as a team. But if the Rams win, it's gonna be because of something strategic, something surprising schematically that they do, I think. I mean, that's my take on it, and I think that sounds like what you were saying.
yeah, and I think that they will. The thing that worries me, like the Eagles are better in every aspect except that the Eagles cannot pass the ball. Like I don't know why they can't throw the ball anymore.
Yeah.
They still have great receivers. I mean, I'm a little biased when it comes to Jalen Hurts. I know he's not a consistent overall passer, but he played the game of his life in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Like he was on one. Like I don't even think the Chiefs defense was that bad in that game, and they put up 35 points against us. Like Jalen Hurts was amazing in that game. And so I think that colors my perception of him a little bit. I think this is going to be like a really low scoring game because I think the Eagles defense is awesome. and they're going to give, I think the biggest mismatch in this game to me is the Eagles against the Rams offensive line. I think that they're going to pressure Stafford a lot, but Stafford can sometimes excel in those situations. Like the Vikings weren't able to do it to him, and they've been a great pressure defense all year.
Yeah,
But it feels to me like this game is going to be like 17-14 or something, where it's just like a slog. Like the Eagles can't move the ball, and the Rams can't either. And I could really see the Rams pulling this out, but you're right. The Eagles are just better. Their defense is so good. And I think that's ultimately what I'm going to hang my hat on is that I think they'll just be enough. Like the Rams will be in it and they'll have a chance to win. And I think they lose by less than a touchdown in a score that's in the teens. And maybe I'll stick with that. Like I might even say like 17-16. Like the Eagles beat the Rams. It'll be something like that.
yeah, yeah. I was thinking like 23-20. Maybe that's too high scoring even. But and it also, you know, I don't know, 23-20. Like that's really anyone's game, and like depending on how you get there. But I kind of feel like it might not feel like anyone's game. I mean, it might feel like it's close because it's a one score game, but like the Eagles are clearly the better team, and the Rams. It's just because they're not scoring a lot that the Rams have a chance. I feel like it might be that kind of game. Um, but but yeah, 23-20. I guess I don't know. I don't really love that score, but yeah, I guess that's where I'll go.
It'll be like, and I feel like the Rams will have like one really exciting touchdown drive, and you'll just be like, I want this team to be winning, but they can't beat the other team. Like it's like
Yeah,
I feel like it's gonna be like one of those games where like
yeah,
the public enthusiasm will be for the Rams because they seem more fun, but they just get
definitely. Yeah,
squeezed out by the other team that's just more talented.
yeah. I think that like if you could, right, the most it would be very exciting for the Rams to win this. I would not be that excited if the Eagles won this. But I do have the luxury of just like not having a lot of vested interest in either team, so I can just sort of watch it for entertainment value.
Well,
Um,
if the Chiefs lose, I won't be excited about anybody winning. So,
that's, that's fair. Uh, yeah.
right. And then
And then yeah, go ahead.
Ravens Bills. I
Yeah.
actually have a strong opinion. Like I think I feel like I think strongly in one way about this game. Not that one team's a lot better than the other, but I feel confident in who I think will win. What
Really?
is
Okay.
your conception?
That's that's cool. I don't feel confident, and this is one where it's like I just want to see these teams play, right? Like this is one of those games where it's like it reminds me of like Colts Patriots back in like 2006 or something, where it's just like these are two really good teams, and I'm just gonna enjoy watching them both play each other because they're both fun to watch. Um, I just want to see this. I don't want to see the game. I don't know at all how it's gonna go. I mean, maybe like I could like probably what's gonna happen is it's gonna be less exciting than I think it's gonna be. Uh, like like what's gonna happen? I don't know, but it feels to me like it's gonna be a very very compelling narrative structure game, right? Where it turns on key plays and whatnot. But I don't. I guess you've picked a lot of the scores first, so I'll pick this one first. But I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen here. I think I'll say 27 to. I'm going to pick the score before I pick which teams. 27 to 24. And I don't know who's winning this. I guess I'll go Bills. 27-24 Bills, but I am not sure.
Yeah, so I do think it's going to be a really compelling game. I think it's going to be a really fun game as far as drama, but I don't think it's going to be like a shootout. Um, I so in my mind, I draw a lot of parallels between this game and the 2022 AFC Championship game between the Chiefs and the Bengals. I feel like the Ravens kind of blew out the Bills this year. The Bengals at that point had really seemed like they had the Chiefs number. Then they're coming into Arrowhead. They're favored in Arrowhead. Everybody was kind of like, I feel like there was a lot of momentum behind the Bengals, and I feel the same way with the Ravens coming into Buffalo right now. Like the Ravens are favored. The game actually started with the Bills favored, and the Ravens have been bet up so much that now they're favored in this game. I think there's a lot of Bills disrespect. I think that the Bills are going to come in and they're going to win this game. It's going to be ugly like that one. Like that Chiefs AFC Championship game was really compelling, but it wasn't pretty. And I think that's what it's going to be like that. A very similar score. I think that was a 23-20 Chiefs win, if I remember correctly. I think this is going to be very similar. Maybe I'll say 24-20 Bills. Like a low scoring, but I think there's just been a little too much Bills disrespect. Like the Ravens look really good, but Josh
They were
Allen
the
has.
Steelers. Let's remember.
That's true. Well, the Bills are playing the Broncos, but uh, I just, Josh Allen has. The other thing too is Josh Allen has done this and gone farther. The one time that I have been disappointed in Josh Allen's in the playoffs was that year when they got kind of handled by the Bengals. But otherwise, you know, he's had high leverage moments. I don't consider like the 13 seconds game to be a Josh Allen loss. Like he was right there. It was just that the Chiefs were that much, just a little bit better. Like he played a great game. So I just have a little more faith in him. I think they're just going to do a little bit more, but there are going to be a lot of punts. There are going to be a lot of like, oh my God, why can't these guys move the ball? It's going to be cold. It's going to be
It's gonna be really cold, right?
ugly. Yeah, it's like 18 degrees, I think it's going to be that high. Like, it'll be ugly, but I think the Bills get it done. I guess I'll stick with that 24-20.
Yeah. Maybe I wasn't taking the cold temperatures into account when I got my score. I mean, that feels a little bit high for a 27-24. Sounds a little bit high for a frigid game like that, but I'll stick with it. Yeah, yeah. This is just one where like I'm very excited to see. And you make a good point about like Josh Allen being like pretty good in when it matters, right? And like that 13 seconds game, you can't really say is his fault. And um, so he shows up
Yeah,
in a
and
way that
last,
like Jackson really hasn't showed up in the playoffs.
yeah,
I mean, last week, but not a lot was asked of him. Even like he didn't have to make a lot of clutch plays in that one or anything like that. So it'll be I'll be interested to see what happened. Like when it does come down to crunch time, like who's making those plays.
yeah,
Both
I
both of
think,
them, I think, have like this could be like career, well, not career defining, but like one of the defining moments of their careers. So,
yeah. I mean, my biggest hope is that they just knock the crap out of each other. It's really physical. They really go at it. Both teams are miserable after the game physically, and they decide they're going to go to Arrowhead and lose to the Chiefs. That would be nice. Because I tell you what, assuming the Chiefs can get by the Texans, I'm not thrilled about playing either of these teams. So,
yeah, I think they both have to make you like you're not comfortable with either of those teams going
oh
there.
no.
I mean,
I mean, how did I feel last year in the AFC Championship? Oh, I was very worried. We were going into Baltimore. Yeah.
yeah,
The last year was just, I mean, the divisional round was terrifying. We went to Buffalo, and then we went to Baltimore.
yeah, you
That
had
was just,
a gauntlet, you might say, last
yeah,
year. Um,
the, yeah. I'm trying to remember when was there ever a time I felt like really good in a playoff game?
like
I
going into
mean,
it.
yeah, I hate to say this, but it was probably playing the Steelers in 2021.
Yeah,
I wasn't that worried about that one,
yeah. I
but
mean, how could you be? I don't blame you. I was also not worried about that one. For
I might say too the divisional round in 2020 playing against the Browns. I was not that worried going into that game. And then Mahomes got concussed in that game, and it got a lot scarier. And Chad Henne had to
Oh
finish out the
yeah,
win. That was
yeah.
terrifying. I watched so we won that game on a fourth down, 4th and 1 pass to Tyreek Hill to ice it from Chad Henne. And I was sitting in an airplane watching it on my phone, and I like pumped my fist in the middle of the like in the aisle. Like I was like, that was That was a nerve-wracking game. But going into it, I felt pretty good about it. But it did not turn out how I thought. That was another game where Mahomes looked awesome to start, and then he got concussed in the first quarter, and the entire outlook of that game changed.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, well, while we're on the topic, the last time I felt good about going into a playoff game, I think was when we played the Dolphins the week before we played you guys in 2016.
Oh,
We beat the Dolphins like 30 to 12 or something like that. Like that was a fine game. That was nothing too stressful. For a playoff game, like that's as good as it gets probably. And then we had our last playoff win for like a decade the next week against you guys. So,
well,
I didn't feel good about that one.
and I also, I have a bit of a gripe. I feel like it's a little unfair when people say that the Steelers have lost six playoff games in a row. Because like the first one came after two playoff wins, so I feel like that one like kind of doesn't
Yeah.
count. You can't lump that one
I
in.
mean,
Like,
it wasn't a good loss. I mean, like we got destroyed by the Patriots. But yeah,
because I mean, at that point, like everybody except one team is gonna have a playoff loss every playoffs. Like
yeah,
so you're basically just saying you didn't win the Super Bowl the first year. If that first year had been like one and done, like I get it. But like you won two playoff games and then lost in the AFC title game. So like the five one and dones, fair criticism. But I don't know that I would criticize anything to do with a 2-1 run through the playoffs
yeah. That's fair. I mean, you could criticize different things about it, but you wouldn't, might not like
as a
our
whole.
defensive scheme against the Patriots. Yeah, don't lump it in with the other trends of one and done that we've had. But we've had a good trend regardless of one and dones. Um, so I don't know. I think there's definitely stuff to criticize there, but um, yeah. Well, should be a good week of football. In your opinion, what is the best week of football? Just objectively speaking, is this it, or is it the championship week?
I think so. What's funny is like when you take your team out of it,
Yeah.
I think this is it. Like this is the best NFL week of the season. Uh, you know, the NFL is making a bit of a push with the super wild card. Well, I guess they don't even call it super wild card anymore, thankfully. I felt like that was a pretty dumb term, but uh,
Is it like
they're
super
making.
wild, or is it super
I think it's
wild?
super wild card
Yeah,
because like
because
it
they used
was
to
the
call it
wild
wild card.
card,
Yeah,
and then they added another team, so it became a super wild card.
yeah, super
I don't
wild.
think the card is super wild.
Yeah.
uh, I mean, I guess it could be. Like,
What is a wild card? I mean, like, what is the card exactly supposed to be?
I don't know.
What are we like? Is there an object? Is there a
I mean,
substance here that is corresponding to this noun?
I
Wild card.
mean, there is like a concept of cards being wild, like a
Yeah,
Joker or something,
yeah.
something being wild. I wonder if it just came from that because technically a wild card could be anything.
Like you don't
So,
know what you're gonna get with this team. We
right.
just let them into the playoffs because we thought it'd be fun. And
Or maybe it's like we don't know what team is going. There's like no, because like the other playoff teams, there's a structure, like they won a division.
yeah,
But then the other one, it's a wild card. Like it could come from anywhere. It depends on who the
I
best
see.
team
I
is.
get it. Maybe that's what's wild about it. It's not like that. Yeah, it's not that
Could be from
unpredictable.
any division.
Yeah, I see. Uh, well, yeah. So yeah, I agree. Super wild card or wild card weekend is not it because you get a lot of teams like the Steelers who just are really probably shouldn't be there. Um, but
Well,
division
definitely adding the
games,
seven seed has made that worse.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, has the 17 ever done much?
well,
Like,
last year, the problem is last year the Packers beat the crap out of the
oh yeah,
Cowboys. That's the one time the seven seed won, I think. I don't think they've ever won otherwise.
yeah. But yeah, it's either this week. I mean, next week with the championship games, just like how much is on the line there, I think adds to the drama. Um, so it's either this week or next week. But
I feel like having a team that makes the championship game, like then when your team's in it, I think you care a lot more about the championship game. Like the divisional, I mean, this sounds like very privileged, but it's like the divisional round, like it means something, like in that you don't want to lose, but you're not like that excited to win the divisional round. Like once you, I don't, I mean, it never gets old to be like we're going to the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
like. So I feel like winning the championship game, we were like, whoa, like this was, and then I it just makes you realize how lucky you are when it's just like, if they're not standing on a stage after the game holding up a trophy,
You don't
it
have that
doesn't
much
quite
against
seem as me.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's a good life we're living right now as Chiefs fans. We're very fortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, you should appreciate it. I'm sure I know you do, but okay, well, those are our predictions for this week. Should be a fun week. Hope people enjoy watching it. Yeah. And we'll be back, I guess, next week with hopefully more more Chiefs predictions.
Let's hope so. Let's
Yeah.
hope so. All
All
right.
right.
Well, thanks to all of you that are following along. I haven't put out either the Chiefs Week 18 film review, which is a bunch of backups playing, or the Steelers Ravens film review. I will do one of them soon. I think I'm going to do the Chiefs one because it's just going to be irrelevant, whereas the Steelers Ravens one we could do next week and that'll still be
We can
okay.
do that like any time. Yeah. We got to sit with that one for many months now. So,
So that's probably what's going to happen is in the next couple of days the Chiefs one will come out and then I'll try to get the Steelers one done before I have to do the Chiefs, hopefully. Man, if I have to do a Steelers loss and Chiefs loss back to back, that's going to be a rough couple of reviews. So come on, Chiefs, like, help me out here. Go win this game.
yeah.
Anyway, stuff will be coming out at some point. All right. Well, thanks to everybody, and until next time.